Hello, so for Gourmet Games here, we're going to have a quick look at how you would taste wine. I'm sure the first thing that everyone would think is the smell, but actually the color is very, very important. Best way to do it is a white tablecloth or even a white sheet of paper. You've probably got a bit of paper anyway from your handouts and your leaflet. It's just turn it over and you have a little look and you get a bit of transparency of color. This can tell you a few different things. In a white, for example, a really light pale white would kind of tell you that it's a lighter, fresher wine. If it has a little bit of a golden color, perhaps there was a little bit of oak usage. If you look at reds and it's a lighter red, then you might think that it's a Pinot Noir or thin-skinned variety, whereas if you've got really dark, inky colors, then we're kind of thinking of a thicker skinned varietal, perhaps like a Cabernet Sauvignon. Then on to smell. I mean, you can see the way I do this. I'm a professional, I've been doing it for years. But if you're a little bit comfortable, you can just hold the glass on the table and gently move it around. What this does is it releases the aromas in the glass. Wine's quite a complex thing on a scientific level. The reason you smell things that you smell in fruits or vegetables, example, is it's a binding of polycarbon. So if you look on a molecular level, they have a similar sort of makeup and layout that makes you smell raspberries, strawberries, cherries, leather, these kind of things that you would associate in other smells. So it's always good to have a nice little swig of the glass and a sniff and allow the aroma to get into. The important thing though is if you kind of sniff too much and then you sniff again, you're kind of dulling your olfactory nerve. So it's good to sometimes take a little break, stop, think, and then have a little sniff again. Now, tasting. Tasting, of course, is the big thing. This tells you everything. When you're tasting, I prefer to have a little sip. I prefer to have a little sip. I'm a gulper as well. I do like a good chunk of wine in my mouth, but when you're tasting, it's always better to have a smaller amount. So you see a lot of sommeliers, they kind of slurp the wine. You're effectively aerating the wine in your mouth. Once you get air into the wine, it releases more aromas and more flavors. This can take a little bit of practice, so perhaps maybe not do your first practice in your bright new white shirt or white tablecloth. Maybe practice with a little bit of water at home before you have guests over. But it's a simple process of having the wine towards your tongue and just slowly bringing in air to slurp and kind of aerate all that flavor around the mouth. So on to tasting, there's a couple of things that you really put to note when you're tasting things. Everything is kind of broken up as far as your tongue works with sweetness. You can sense acidity, and of course you can sense a bitterness and a saltiness. So you kind of think the acidity would make the side of your mouth salivate. This can tell you a few things about the grape varietal. Riesling is a very, very high acid varietal, but it can also tell you that it's a cooler climate as well. If you imagine, grapes that ripen really, really quickly tend to lose their acidity and be what we say is flabby, whereas a cooler climate wine, a European wine, or high altitude wine, or coastal wine would have this lovely zip of freshness. So when we sense sweetness on the palate, this would come from the tip of the tongue, so you can tell if there's a touch of residual sugar or it's a dessert wine. I tend to find most of my fruit flavors and aromatics around the middle of the tongue. But you would sense another kind of thing, which would perhaps be a bitterness, which can be a positive thing, or the tannins. The tannins you kind of sense as they coat all of your mouth, but you do get sometimes bitter notes, which is a positive if it's backed up with the fruit towards the back of the mouth. So you kind of want to balance on your palate between that sweetness or fruit sweetness, the freshness of the wine, and the body based upon the fruit or the oak. So these are the kind of things that you concentrate on that might give you an indication of what the wine is. I'm not going to be exhaustive here, but there's certain things that you should know about wines that will give you certain flavors that are going to help you with blind taste. Rieslings generally have a apple lime kind of flavor. Cabernet Sauvignon, very, very strong on a cassis blackcurrant flavor. These are things you can kind of study before and then get a sense in your head of what the wine might be. So enjoy your evening with Gourmet Games. There is a right and wrong answer for what the wine is, but there is no right or wrong answer about whether you enjoy it. So the most important thing is to keep tasting, understand what you enjoy, but most importantly, keep discovering new things.